Welcome back. In this video, we'll apply the objection framework to one of the most common objections you'll hear: timing. It's not the right time. Let's circle back later. We've got other priorities right now. These are some of the most misunderstood objections in sales, because sometimes they're completely legitimate, and sometimes they're polite ways of saying, this isn't important enough to deal with. Your job is not to guess which one it is. Your job is to find out. Let's start with a mindset shift. A timing objection is rarely about the calendar. It's about priority. People make time for what matters, and they delay what doesn't, or what feels risky. So when someone says not now, you don't respond with urgency, and you don't accept it at face value. You explore it calmly. Let's walk through the framework in this context. Step 1, acknowledge. You've heard this part before. You keep it simple. Okay, that makes sense. No pushback, no persuasion, no disappointment in your tone. Then you pause. That pause matters because it shows you're not trying to rush them. Step 2, clarify the timing. Now you clarify. Not when, but why. Here are a few clean clarification questions. Just listen first. Can you help me understand what makes the timing tricky right now? What's taking priority over this at the moment? When you say later, what would need to change for this to move up the list? Notice what these questions do. They don't argue with the objection. They explore it. They invite the prospect to explain how decisions are really made. Now your turn. Say this slowly. Okay, what's taking priority over this right now? Again, slower. Okay, what's taking priority over this right now? Good. Here's another one. Okay, when you say later, what would need to change for this to feel like a priority? Again, calm authority. Okay, when you say later, what would need to change for this to feel like a priority? Good. When they answer, you're listening for one of three things: a real constraint. For example, budget cycles, regulatory timing, missing stakeholders. Or a priority gap. They care, but not enough to act. Or avoidance. They don't want to say no, but they don't want to say yes either. Each one leads to a different decision. A quick clarification before we move on. You may have seen timing objections handled differently. Some approaches acknowledge the concern, then try to set timing aside and push for a decision. We're not using that approach here, not because it never works, but because it solves the wrong problem. Those techniques are designed to create movement. Zero Fluff Sales is designed to create clarity. If your priority is maximizing short-term closes at almost any cost, higher pressure approaches may suit you better. What we're optimizing for here is something different. Deals where the buyer feels ownership, decisions stick, and conversations don't unravel after the call. That usually means fewer reversals, fewer complaints, and fewer deals you wish you'd never closed. So instead of bypassing timing, we treat it as information. If something truly matters, priority will surface without pressure. If it doesn't, pushing harder only wastes time, yours and theirs. That's why we clarify, and then we decide. To make this concrete, here's what a clean timing conversation can sound like. The prospect says, it's not the right time. You respond calmly. Okay, that makes sense. What's taking priority over this at the moment? They explain. You listen. Then you clarify. Okay, and what would need to change for this to feel like a priority? They answer. At that point, the picture is usually clear. If it's a real temporary constraint, you might say, that makes sense. Would it be useful to reconnect once X is resolved? And if it isn't a priority, you don't push, you acknowledge it, and decide whether it makes sense to continue. No pressure, no urgency, just clarity. Step 3, decide what to do. Once you understand the reason, you decide. Let's walk through the options. Option 1, continue. When the timing issue is temporary, the priority is real and a clear next step exists. Continue. This might sound like, okay, that makes sense. Given that, would it be useful to reconnect once X is resolved? This is not chasing, it's sequencing. Option 2, park it. You park the conversation when the issue matters but can't be addressed yet. Parking sounds calm and professional. Okay, for now it probably makes sense to pause. When things change, we can pick it back up. No pressure, no follow-up traps, no fake urgency. Option 3, exit. This is the most important option. You exit the conversation when there's no real priority, no ownership, or no clear reason to act. Exiting might sound like, based on what you've said, it may not be a priority to solve right now. And that's okay. This does two things. First, it protects your time. Second, it often earns respect because you're not pushing. And occasionally, it causes the prospect to reevaluate how important the issue actually is. Either way, you've stayed professional. One final reminder, a timing objection is not a problem to solve. It's a signal to read. If the problem is real, priority will appear. If it's not, no amount of follow-up will create it. Your job is not to force momentum. Your job is to recognize it, or recognize when it isn't there. In the next video, we'll apply the same framework to cost and budget objections where the words change, but the logic stays exactly the same. When you're ready, continue to Module 5.5.